Are children, and they are children of the world, and they are the responsibility of all of us.
It is the riveting national story of the moment, the flood of humanity crossing the American border in the Southwest, the immense amount of children being dumped in America, often without any guidance or adult supervision. The humanitarian side of it all is staggering, but there are other concerns that must be addressed right now. Let us welcome in the Executive Director of the Center for Immigration Studies, Mark Krikorian, who is going to join us momentarily, because it is something that needs to be discussed when you consider that there are now a number of different items that are coming out regarding this. Let's just bring you up to date, because so much is happening in the American Southwest right now when it comes to this instance. Before we bring Mark in, we need to clarify a few of the different stories that are waltzing around out here right now. There is so much, and we simply have to get to the point of understanding what is real and what is not. We have some reports coming out that saying the flood of immigrants is being orchestrated. We have some talking about the fact that there are Mexican cartels involved here. This is a story that is taking on so many different tentacles, so we got to try and draw it all together here into what is happening. Mark Krikorian now joins us here on Midpoint. Mark, thank you so much for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
Mark, I have just tried to detail some of the things that are going on here because, boy, I'll tell you, this story takes on a number of different elements every single day we look, Homeland Security, whatever. Let me just start by getting from you, first of all, when we look at what is happening here, I think the biggest thing that Americans want to ask and continue to ask is, how could we have been caught so off guard by something like this? Other side of the question, were we really caught that off guard, or did we see this coming?
Well, people should have seen it coming. I mean, the flow into South Texas has been doubling each year for the past few years. It's relatively recent, but it didn't just start 2 weeks ago. In fact, I was down in South Texas with a group of people on a border tour last March, I think, so a year and a half ago about. And even then, the ranchers and others we talked to were just screaming about the explosion of people. And of course, it's gotten a lot worse in the past year and a half. So this is not something that the administration didn't know was building. It's just that it got to such a level now that it's really kind of taken on a life of its own. And the fact is, the administration caused this flow of people. I mean, Central America is really badly off. There's no question about it. It makes Mexico look pretty good, frankly. But, there's people who are poor all over the world. The question is, what messages did we send that enticed these people to come? And the Border Patrol has actually talked to the people they've apprehended. They've done, surveys of the people in detention. And they said, why did you decide to come now? And almost all of them said, well, we heard, the word came back in the grapevine that you were letting people go. You were just, when you caught them, you were giving them some kind of paper and then just letting them into the United States. And we figured we'd take advantage of that. And so, we created this problem. The administration certainly shouldn't be surprised by it.
But let's talk about the creating of the problem then. It's not as if this thing suddenly happened. I mean, certainly we have an influx of immigrants that are continuing to pour across the border. And what you're pointing to, here's the piece of paper. Go away. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. So it still strikes people as being amazed that intelligent people sitting in charge of a country couldn't see this growing to a rate where they would say, we have to do something now, and all of a sudden, boom, media hits. Everybody starts to go crazy about this now, and they're caught so off guard. What you're saying, though, is a lot of people are indicating that this was a planned idea by the administration.
No, I don't think it was planned. In other words, I don't think they got on a conference call and they said, let's engineer this crisis. What they did is they don't really see the United States as having the right to keep people out. They see this as a humanitarian issue, like a hurricane or an earthquake, and they have to just take care of whoever shows up, and that you and I have to pay for it. And the point is that message, that perspective, has caused a whole lot of extra people to come who never would have come otherwise. The problem for the administration's perspective is that it's now a political problem. In other words, they were okay when nobody was noticing it. They really didn't mind. But now that people notice, it really has undermined their whole argument for amnesty, because if the border's not under control, then how can you even have a debate about amnesty? And so the administration is kind of rushing behind the scenes to try to contain this, but not because they realize it's a problem for America, because they actually reject the idea that we have a right to stop it. They now are concerned because it's a political problem for the president, because everybody else wants this flow to stop, even though the administration doesn't really see, what the problem is.
Here's an interesting part of this here, because the focus of the story is that suddenly there has been an influx of children that have come across. Now, as you look at the story and you see some of the numbers coming across, has it really been that much of a marked explosion of children, or has there always been that sort of a number of kids being sent across the border? Was it a true explosion?
This definitely is a big increase in the number of minors. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind. First is most of these minors are teenage boys, 15, 16, 17 years old. 17, you can join the Army. So, yes, you're a minor, but, Senator Dick Durbin referred to these people as babies. And the fact is there's no 2-year-olds wandering around the desert in northern Mexico. There are, though, women with their kids coming. Either single moms or maybe in some cases people coming to join the husbands who live here, that sort of thing. That's increased a lot. But the reason for these, both the teenagers and the moms with kids, is that the grapevine, the message that's gotten home back to Central America is that if you either are a kid or are a woman with children, that's what causes you. That's why the Americans will let you go. In other words, that an adult male, they won't arrest, but that if you're a kid, they let you go.
All right, let's look at a couple of things here and different stories, because as I mentioned here at the top before we introduced you, there are different stories and different elements here. Here's one now talking about the NBPC Vice President, that's the National Border Patrol Council Vice President, Sean Moran, quoted as saying, "Mexican cartels are controlling this flow of illegal immigrants. The cartels are exploiting this crisis to get the shipments through. It is not necessarily someone from Colombia, but it is the cartels still running a lot of this traffic." Your opinion?
Oh, I have no doubt about that at all. I mean, this is the Border Patrol guys obviously see it on the ground. So, I mean, he's a much more credible source for this than me. But yeah, of course they are. Now, this is not to say that the cartels have engineered this necessarily.
No, they're just making money off it.
Yeah, of course they are. They're making money off the smuggling, but they're also making money off the kind of the chaos. Half the time, the Border Patrol agents are now doing paperwork or they're babysitting people. And so that just opens up vast opportunities for smugglers of any other kind to get stuff across, because there's just far fewer Border Patrol agents able to do their jobs. Instead, they're back, filling out forms and paperwork and all of this. So in a whole variety of ways, this serves the purposes of the cartels, even though they didn't create this themselves.
When we look at the types that are coming over here, we've got the National Association of Former Border Patrol Officers, and again, you've been in touch, you're reading the same things I am here, basically saying that it is orchestrated, that it simply is not just all of a sudden it happened. And there are people thinking that it is orchestrated because while they're sending in 15, 16, 17-year-old boys, as you said, there are people worried that there are criminals walking in, that there are undesirables, that there is another faction here, that there is weapons smuggling going on. And again, we've opened it up into so many things here. Out of all these different charges and inferences that you've heard, do you believe any of this at all, that there is something much more insidious than just the cartels looking to make money?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't think anybody sat around, had a conference call and decided, let's engineer this particular crisis. Things happen that nobody really expects, even though maybe they should have expected them, because the administration helped create this problem. But now that the problem is here, all kinds of people who want to benefit from it are trying to benefit from it. Cartels and other bad guys are using the opportunity to sneak stuff across the border because nobody's watching, because everybody's filling out paperwork. The open borders groups inside the United States are using this, especially the idea that they're minors, as basically a way to kind of pry open America's borders in general, basically delegitimize border or immigration enforcement, because if you enforce the law, you're being mean to little kids. Therefore, all immigration enforcement has to be degraded. So there are a whole variety of people who are taking advantage of this situation in ways that are really harmful for the country.
Have we gone to the point of no return, but past the point of no return on this? I mean, certainly the children are here, the minors are here, the mothers are here, And for those who are saying, and we hear it a lot, you hear, ship them back, get them out, let's get them out of the country. We're past that point at this time. There seems to be a feeling from some people, almost a resignation, that you better prepare for it because they're here to stay.
No, we've not passed any point of no return. I mean, some of these people will end up staying. There's no question about it. They'll finagle some way. Heck, the Justice Department is actually using taxpayer money to hire lawyers to help these kids in immigration court prevent us from deporting them. So the Justice Department is hiring lawyers to fight the other Justice Department lawyers so that more of these young people, as many as possible, will be able to stay. So there's no question some are going to stay. But, we're a big country. This kind of thing happens. The political fallout of this is already growing. And the thing I compare it to is the Mariel boat lift. And this was a while ago now, 1979. Castro pushed out 100,000+ people, or opened the doors. A lot of them fled. He put in criminals and others in the flow. And it was politically disastrous for President Carter. Governor Clinton in Arkansas lost re-election because they rioted in his state. There was a detention center. So there's going to be plenty of problems. I think we're going to be able to rein this in, but it's probably going to get worse.
I had to sigh when you said Mariel boat lift. I was a kid when that happened, and that destroyed Miami Beach and areas of South Florida for many generations to come. Mark Krikorian, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll do it again.
Thank you.
All right, tell us how you feel now, because we're out here. We're waiting to hear from you. Here on Midpoint, every day, we question everything.